Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Adi Klevit, the founder of Business Success Consulting Group. Adi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLink's intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 Security Operations Center, we use a combination of AI and cybersecurity technicians to know when a hacker has successfully bypassed your security. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Adi, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Business Success Consulting Group?
Sure. So what we do is we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures for fast-growing companies that are lacking consistency, or companies that the owner wants to exit, sell, and they want everything documented. It's basically if you want your company systematized, we don't help you to become a franchise. You don't have to be a franchise. It's just a franchise model. Everything's systematized. You have processes and procedures for everything. We do it for you.
That's fantastic. So, I think, as a founder and business owner myself, I think that's one of the things that a lot of businesses really struggle with. Having the processes and procedures kind of formally laid out, right? It's one thing when, it's a handful of people, you all know the process, you've gotten it down and great. But when you add somebody else to it, when you go to sell it, you name it. That's really the difference between a kind of a mom and pop and an actual business that runs and functions as a business, right?
That is absolutely correct. If you are functioning as a business, you have to replicate your actions. You have to make sure you have well-documented processes. It helps in onboarding, increases efficiency, customer retention, also employee retention. And it allows you to have the freedom that you really want from the business. So you're not a slave to the business and have to work 80 hours in your business.
Oh, absolutely. The headache of not having it, and then it's just all up here. You've got to do everything. The new people, it's hard to you spend so much more time training the new people as they come in. So let's walk through that. What's it look like? Let's say I wanted to, bring you into CyberLinks and you take us and do the whole 9 yards. What would that look like?
So the first step we're going to do is we're going to map all your processes, but it's not just with you. We're going to sit with your leadership team, with the department heads, and we're going to map all the processes that you have in the company. Then we're going to ask the question, which area of everything that we looked at, if you had well-documented processes and procedures right now, will get you the biggest return on investment. And we'll figure out what that return on investment is. For instance, we have a client that they do deck and windows and sidings, and we ask that question. And right now they are getting 10 callbacks and in a certain period of time, and they wanted to get it down to 0. Okay, good. So that is the return on investment. And obviously the area that we needed to address was the installation and the technicians. So that's where we started. So we identified the area where we want to start. For instance, maybe you have a problem with accounts receivables. Okay, so we'll start documenting and looking into the process of accounts receivable. Maybe you have an office manager that is going to go on maternity leave next month. We definitely need to start there, because if there is nobody that knows what she knows and what she's doing, you will have a problem. And we need to make sure that somebody can cover for her. So, and know what to do and how to execute it and follow the processes. So we identify that area, and then we set regular meetings where we are going to work with the subject matter experts that we figured. So let's say we start with your accounts manager. So we are going to pick a few accounts managers that we are going to extract the information from them in order to create the procedures for the account managers. And we are going to set up those meetings, extract the information. We are all experts in knowledge transfer, and we ask very specific questions. It's not just we ask, show me, and ask, show me how you do it and what you do, but we also ask questions like, what is best practice? What is working and what is not working? If you could change it, what would you change? Why? We ask a lot of why questions so we can understand what stands behind the process. So when we document what is important. We document it very concise, but we document what matters in order to get the results. And that's another thing, is that we identify what are the required or the optimum results for that particular process. And we attach a measurable to it. So with the callbacks, okay, so that is a measurable, it's the number of callbacks. Another one would be that, let's say with accounts receivables, right now we are collecting 70%, we're gonna get it to 90%. If the process is being followed, is correct and being followed by the right people, it should get you the results that you want. At the same time, we also optimize. So that's what we ask. How are you doing it today? What would you like it to look like? What is stopping you from doing it? We look for those, oh, we're doing it like that because it was always done that way. And that is something that we challenge it. Why are we continuing doing it? Is there a better way? And today with automation and AI and all the tools that we have available, we also make recommendations on how to improve and how to optimize. Then we roll the processes out. So making sure that the processes are being followed by all is very important. And I tell people, I'm not in the business of documenting processes. You're not? I'm like, no, we're in the business of implementing processes so everyone uses it, so we can empower the teams to produce what they need to be producing. And we allow then the entrepreneur, the business owner, the founder, the leader to have the freedom to create on the business. That is the only way it's going to happen, if it's actually being rolled out correctly and it's being followed by all. So we have an 8-step process on how we ensure that the processes are being followed by everyone. And if we hear the challenge, well, I tried, my people are not going to follow, I don't, it won't work for my company, we'll love that, because we can overcome that. We have the tools and the knowledge on how to overcome that, and we get it done. So the end result is those processes and procedures are rolled out to everyone in the company, and they are now part of the culture. They are part of the company. They are part of how you operate, basically part of the DNA of the organization.
So let me ask you, what is that 8-step process? Can you take us through that?
Yes. So I'm going to take you through some of it, because it will take me. I usually do an hour and a half presentation on it.
It's just a
but
little
I'll walk you through the steps that needs to be in. So first of all, the first thing is the mindset. Okay, you have to think like a process-driven leader. And I have a whole workshop on that, but I'm going to give you the high level. So what does it mean to have the mindset of somebody who is process-driven? And the first thing that I ask, well, what does it mean to you when you hear process-driven? Does it mean that you are bureaucratic, that you are a micromanager, that you are cold and not compassionate? Or does it mean that you are organized, structured, and able to get things done? We really have to dissect what is that mindset, what does it consist of to be a process-driven leader? You have to really want it. And some people are more process-driven or have the mindset than others, especially if you're a visionary and you feel, I'll give you some misconceptions that processes can feel corporate-y and cold, where they're not. That's a myth, right? Or the processes are going to block people's creativity. That's a myth. So there are a lot of myths out there that we have to demystify first in order for somebody to get that mindset. The other thing in terms of the mindset is that we need to make sure that you understand what are the traits of a process-driven leader. So some of the traits is you have to have clarity. You have to be able to communicate with clarity and want to communicate with clarity. You have to be persistent. You have to be able to, you also have to be courageous, and you have to not give in when somebody asks, oh, how do you do that? You have to be able to, instead of answering the question, you have to be able to direct to the process. You have to have accountability. You have to have a sense of accountability and demand accountability from others, right? So we develop those traits. So we have an exercise where we name those traits and we work out basically how you can adopt those traits in order to be a process-driven leader. That's the first thing. Having the mindset and having that clarity of what does it take to be one is very important. The second one is that we need to get buy-in from the team. You can't do it by yourself, and that starts early in the process. The team has to be part of the whole endeavor here, because if they're not, they are going to object. They are going to feel left. They're not just feel, they're going to be left out, and you're not going to have the support. Too much objection. If you have too much objections or disagreements internally, you won't be able to push through this project. This is not an easy project. It's not glamorous. It's not sitting in a room in a retreat and figure out your mission and your vision and your core values, which are super important and extreme. I mean, I do it, and I definitely encourage people to do that. And I'm not making less of it, but it's much more fun, at least for me. I mean, I would love to go to a retreat with my people, to a nice place, or even take 4 hours at the beginning. Like, let's say even you're not going on a retreat outside, you take 4 hours to sit down in a room and you figure it out. Today, for instance, I did this exercise with another company that I'm a partner at, and we had a whole discussion about vision. It was beautiful. I felt, I walk out of there with a lot of energy because I love those things. But when you do process work, I'm not saying it's not energizing or it's not something that is rewarding, but it takes the hard work of extracting the information, figuring it out, and all that. So if you do not have the buy-in from the team, it's going to be harder. And they're going to put objections, and they're going to have opposition, etc. So there is a whole way of how to get buy-in from the team. And one of them is we use a lot of surveys and questionnaires for the team to find what is it in it for them, right? What is it that they are going to gain from it? I'll give you an example. We were working with a construction company, and we were going to document the sales process for the company. And the company had very well established, a lot of experience, a lot of years in the company, salespeople. And we were going to interview them because we need to extract the information and build the sales process. The reason why the owner wanted us to do that is so they can create a process if they were expanding and they wanted to train new salespeople. Now, the existing salespeople couldn't care less. I mean, they just want to do their work, right? And they also, some of them, maybe one or two, were worried about their position. Oh, now I'm going to get somebody else who knows what I'm doing. I'm not going to be as valuable. So there were different ideas and different concepts that people had. And so what we did is we found out what is in it for them if they had well-documented processes. What is working for them? What is not working for them? And what do salespeople hate the most or dislike the most? If you had to guess.
I'm thinking it's probably cold calling, but they should love that.
Yeah, it's more, well, this company, they didn't have cold calling. I'm sure they didn't like it, but they already went and sold to the leads that somebody else found. But what they don't like, and I have that experience, I mean, I used to actually manage a sales team, and they don't like admin. They like to be in front of the customer, they like to sell, but the forms and the administration and doing this and doing that, it's like, no, I don't want to do that at all.
It's true.
And that was a problem. So I said, okay, well, how about if we map your workflows, we identify and we document your processes, and then we figure out how we can delegate some of it to an administrator, to a sales admin. Wow, they love that. And that's what we did. We did it with that purpose in mind. So we accomplished documenting the sales process and also improving it, because now we had an admin that speeded things up. So that's an example of getting the buy-in. So we have different ways of getting the buy-in, but that's a very important point.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So you want me to go over the next?
Yeah, please, because I think we're on 2, right? And
That's right. So then the next point is that you have to make sure that you have well-documented processes. If you don't have the processes well documented, if they're overcomplicated, if there is too much information or not enough information, people are not going to use them. And I've seen going to companies and ask them, okay, do you have standard operating procedures? So do you have your processes documented? I said, oh, yeah, we do. Good, show it to me. So, I mean, I seen a document that was 400 pages long. I kid you not, right? It's a manual that got copy pasted from another manual. And I go like, who reads that? Well, that was the complaint. Nobody reads it. So you have to make sure, and we have a very specific methodology on how we document. So you use the 4 methods of learning. Some people are visual, some people like audio, they have to hear, some people want to see the video, some people want to read and write. So you really have to make sure that you have the combination so it will serve everyone. And you also have to make it concise. You have to make it what we like to call it modular, meaning we have a high-level checklist, and then we have the explanation for each step if you want to train. But you can use the checklist for day-to-day reference because you already trained. You don't need to read all the instructions. So that's where we document it correctly. That's
I know we're only on 3 of 8, but I think this is a really interesting one. So as you, not that the others weren't, but I wanted to kind of take a second to dive in here where you talk about the documentation process, and yeah, of course, a 400-page detailed SOP probably isn't the best read, but when you talk about merging the different ways that people learn, and you talk about video and audio. So now you've got this multimodal, SOP here where in it you've got video, you've got audio, you've got, the written procedures,
screenshots, this, and we break it down. The 400, there's nothing wrong with the information in the 400-page manual, and it's probably needed. It was a construction company, and definitely you need all those modules, but you have to arrange it in bite-sized pieces because otherwise, people are going to get overwhelmed and are not going to read it. Yeah. So that is very important.
So along that lines now. So now, obviously this isn't a printed out manual. If you've got, it could
it's
be
online. That's right. So we use, and that's my point number 4, is we have to make it accessible. And that is a big point. When I go into companies and I ask them, do you have your procedures written? Or did you chart your flows? That's one of the things that we also do on point 3. When we document it correctly, we want to make sure that you also have the flow charted. So it's a flow chart of the process itself.
Nice.
So then we go into step 4 where it has to be accessible. Because I go into companies and ask them, do you have it? Oh, yes, show me. Oh, let me ask Cindy where it is. Oh, Cindy, do you know what? No. Okay. Well, you know what? I'll get it to you for next time. So where is it? We don't know. Yesterday, we were speaking to a client and one of his employees said, yeah, it's on my computer. And then she said, if this computer gets stolen, it's not even on the cloud, it's in the computer. So if her laptop is being stolen, that's it. All the knowledge of the company is gone. And that is a point of risk. And I know you're all about risk. And can you imagine in terms of like the amount of risk that you have there? Yeah. And she said, oh, well, I have it also on a flash drive. I was like, wow, okay, well, if somebody takes the flash drive and the laptop, done.
Yeah. So, and how usable is that when it's just on one person's computer and their flash drive?
Right. Yeah. That's right. So that is why we use a centralized location that is cloud-based, that can be backed up, that is secure, and that everyone can access. So the accessibility is very important. And what we really emphasize there is that there has to be one point of truth, one source and one point of truth, that people know that if they are going to log into that system, they are going to know that this is it. It can be a wiki, it can be a software that hosts the procedures, and we have recommendations, but it has to be a single source of truth. Because otherwise, if you start then doing that, and also writing your procedures on a Word document or in a Google Drive or wherever you keep it, then which one is true? You don't know. And then sometimes people will say, oh, this is true when it's not. Or they will say there are too many documents, too many opinions. I'm going to do it my way. So it just opens the door to create that chaos that is unnecessary. So that was point number 4. Point number 5 is that we create onboarding checklists and training checklists for each one of the procedures per position. So for instance, if you want to onboard a technician or an account manager, they will have a checklist of all the procedures that they have to read and learn and study, with assignments, practical assignments of show me how you do it. What did you learn from it? Consulting their understanding. What is it like? Why are we doing things this way? I mean, where have you seen it done? Depends on the position, depends on the procedure. It really varies the questions. But right now, for instance, we are onboarding an office manager for a client, and we created those checklists. So when that person comes on board, all they need to do will be to read the procedures and answer questions, read the procedure, answer questions, and then they can interact with their trainer. But part of answering the questions is also they are going to record videos, because we also want to make sure that it's their communication and their thought and not necessarily something that they ran through AI. So we still want to see how they think, how they, their thought process. And we ask questions that invoke thinking, not just multiple choice, but how questions like, tell me and give me an example of how you would apply that. Give me an example of a scenario where you see that this policy will be useful. And we give them scenarios. Let's say a customer says this, and that. How would you apply this particular policy in order to handle it? So we go deep on that, but it's a great way of training. And what it does, it takes away the fear of letting go of employees that are not good for the culture or not competent or are not cutting it. So that way you can let somebody go and hire somebody new. And yes, you do invest in creating that training, and there is still an investment in training, but it's not as big as it would have been if you didn't have it.
Yep.
So that's step 5. Now, step 6 is we roll it out. We roll it out to the team, and the rollout is very specific. Now, one of the most important things is that, when I hear, this is actually the number one concern when people hear about process documentation. Oh, I tried it, but then my team didn't use it. Or I wasn't able to implement it as part of my culture. Or I wasn't able to get everybody to follow it. Or I still have people that are doing it their way. And I go like, okay, do you know what the number one thing has to happen in order for people to actually follow the processes and procedures?
What's that?
They have to read it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but yes, but that is the number one mistake that is being done. That's the number one mistake that I see, is that the processes, even if they document the processes, even if they manage not to make them too complex and they use the right methodology, or at least they write something or record videos, but then it goes hand in hand with making it accessible. But you have to make the people read it. And you have to train, because remember I told you about the tests and the quizzes, but that is start being used on new employees. But then you have, let's say you have 40 employees that don't even know what's written, but then you hire somebody new and they go to the training. There is still lack of alignment or coordination. So you have to make sure that the existing employees are reading the SOPs or the procedures, that they are also going through the quizzes, that they are going through the training as if though they were new employees, because then everybody's on the same page. And you can't really use the processes if you don't have it reviewed and read by everyone. Now, this stage has other sub-stages that I don't think we have the time to go through them, but basically it's a cycle of having the staff review it, those that were not participating in writing them, obviously, reviewing it. We send surveys to see if they have feedback, how they see they can utilize it. We get them through the quizzes. We take their information and their feedback because that's very important. We revise, we clarify as needed, and then we send it out again, the revised version, so everyone can see it. There is also stages. We roll it out in stages depending on the size of the department and how many people you have there and who we worked with in order to document the processes. But let's leave it like that. Let's move to the next one. So step number 7 is utilization. So we have a whole checklist of how to utilize the processes and procedure as part of your daily management. I'll give you some examples. So let's say there is an issue, something happens. You are in your leadership team meeting, your weekly meeting. Hopefully you have a weekly meeting. If not, we need to establish a process for you to do the weekly meetings. And there is an issue that was raised and you're discussing it. You have to bring up the procedure in order to see what was the source of the issue. And it's always either a people problem, a process problem, or both. But if you don't have the process documented, how are you expecting your people to follow it? They might say, yeah, I follow the process, but what is the process? They might have in their head a totally different process than what the process actually is. And if you don't have it in front of you, if you don't pull it up and identify where the problem was, maybe the problem is on step 5, and all we need to do is to tweak step 5. It happened to me in my own company. We constantly improve our processes. Something happened. One of the consultants told me, she brought up a really good point in terms of the turnaround time of our work. And we saw that it was working fine because nothing happened. And then one of the technical writers was not available. So then we saw the flaw and we go, okay, no problem. We'll fix it. This is what we need to do. This is how we're going to communicate to the client. This is internally what we're going to do in terms of the workflow. Fixed. But if I didn't have that, I would spend hours trying to fix it. So that's one example. Another example is having a very specific output of each process and having an objective way of monitoring it and measuring it. So it has to be attached to a scorecard, and you have to make sure that you have benchmarks for that scorecard to make sure that the process is working. And if you're not meeting the benchmarks, again, so you have to look at the process, what is going on there, and what can be improved in order to achieve what you wanted to achieve. I think we have about 10 steps on that checklist of different ways that you can use it in day-to-day management in order to be successful and have a process-driven culture. So that was step 7. Step 8 is to ensure that you have a periodic review cycle, and also ways to keep the standard operating procedures up to date. So you have to have, and we supply that, a process on how to review the processes and keep them up to date. And remember that changing of a process is driven by 2 things. Time, because things happen. The review is driven by 2 things. Time and events. So let's say you bought a new software, or you change the way that you are doing things, or you open a new location. Good. We need to then look at the procedures, make sure they're up to date. Or you schedule it that every quarter you're looking at 2 departments and evaluating, going through the checklist. That's another thing we provide, is the checklist on how to do the process review, follow it, and then make all the changes. Again, follow the cycle of rolling it out to everyone, so everyone is aware of those changes. Every time there is a change in a procedure, you have to follow the steps of rolling it out. And if you do that, and you also implement, there is a system of accountability. You hold your people accountable for the processes that they're in charge of. And you yourself have that. We start with number 1, with your mindset and the trait that you have to have as a process-driven leader. Then you're going to be able to maintain those processes up to date. They're going to be always in use, and you're going to encourage that use and basically foster a culture of process and process improvement.
I love it. Well, I'd like to go back to step 7 there for a minute. And because I think a lot of people, they may have the process, even whether it's formalized or not, I think one of the important things that is probably new for a lot of organizations and people is that scorecard. How are you, as they say, if it can be measured, if you can measure it, it can be improved. So best to measure it, right? So if you're not measuring things, how do you go about, what's the how do you actually put into place that scorecard and that process of monitoring the process and tracking it? What's that look like?
Okay, so let's take an example. For instance, we're creating the process of collecting money at the end of the job, sending the invoice, collecting money from the customer. If the process is being followed and it's correctly done, then you should be able to see 90% of your invoices being paid on time. Because part of the process, I'm just simplifying it, but
Sure.
let's say part of the process is once the job is done, an invoice is being sent, and if you don't get, you call to make sure that the customer got the invoice, and you call, if you don't hear from them, you call again after 3 days, and then after you send the email, there is a cadence of the follow-up based on best practices. And again, I'm just making it up a simple example because we go, okay, what's best practice? What's worked for you? What didn't? Who are your customers? What is how is this your industry work? So we figure it out and we create something that, if it is followed, should lead to 95% collections. Okay, 95% of the money collected and invoiced. Now we set it as a benchmark. So now we have a scorecard of percent of invoices paid on time. Now, if it is at 60%, we go, okay, what is going on here? Is maybe the process is incorrect. We need to tweak it and we need to do something here. So what is the block? Why are we not getting paid? Or is it not followed? Is the cadence maybe incorrect of the communication and the follow-up? Or is it not being followed? And that's why we have the lack of results. So we really need to evaluate what is working and what is not. But if we don't measure, we won't know what to fix.
Got it. So it's really a matter of establishing a KPI for that process. So whatever that is, boom, that's the KPI. And now we can monitor and say, hey, something's wrong in this process because we're not receiving, payment on 50% of our invoices, or payments coming in late. What can we do to improve this? I love that. That's fantastic. So I got to ask, how did you get into this line of work? This isn't one of those things that kids usually, dream of doing when they grow up. So, how did this come to be?
I chose, when I had to choose my major in college, I decided I wanted to be an industrial engineer. I was attracted to that line of work or study because when I read the explanation of what is an industrial engineer, it said that it is a combination of science, which I was very good at, and understanding people and good communication, which I was also very intrigued by and very good at. That was my natural. I always like people, like talking to people, helping people, and I wanted something that in that area. And I thought that combination of both is wonderful. And I then started working as a consultant in big corporations and I mean, I worked at an international consulting company and we did projects at Mitsubishi and other corporations. And then I got to see big corporations and I got to see process improvement on the floor, on the manufacturing floor. And I think having that experience of process improvement in the manufacturing floor, then it can translate to anything, because if you can do it with actual objects, then you just have to translate it in order to do it in the service industry. So then throughout my career, I also worked at another big consulting company that we specializes in services. So then I was able to use that, what I learned there, my experience, into this one. So I gained a lot of experience, and I always had the entrepreneurial spirit in me. I mean, I opened 2 businesses, and I managed 3 businesses for a client. And then I decided at some point I go like, I just want to open my own business. And that was 2011. And in the beginning, we were generalists, in terms of like general business consulting, because I'm very good at strategy. I'm very good at building businesses and being an advisor and looking at things and coming with bright ideas. But then I would tell my clients, you have to document your processes in order to grow and scale. And they were okay.
Okay, yeah,
Week
sure.
after week after week. and it didn't go anywhere. So I go like, how about if I do it for you? And that was in 2016. That's when I noticed that I would go, oh yeah, can you do it for us? Absolutely. Go, wow, okay, there is a niche here that is needed. Nobody's doing it. And I searched, it was 2016, I went online and I searched for software that can host all those processes. And I thought, oh, there must be a software that does that. And that's where I found one of the softwares that I use, which is Sweet Process. And I talked to the owner and we start, so I start using his software for myself and also recommend it to clients. And so then we provide a service of populating. I mean, we don't just use the software, we use whatever the client uses or other softwares, but we are basically the ones who are creating the content. And now we are a team of 15 and growing. We have consultants, technical writers, marketing, office management, all of that. So so that's the story.
That's fantastic. And a great story at that, because who would have thought? I look at this and I wonder who's the kind of your ideal client. What's that look like? Who should be coming to you?
So my ideal client is the founder, owner of, or a company. Doesn't have to be the founder or the owner, but basically a company that is growing fast. So fast-growing company that is lacking consistency, that they know that they need processes. It might not be the most exciting things that they want to embark upon, but they know that without it, they cannot grow. So they reach a point where they have customers, they have leads coming in, they have the marketing dialed in to a degree. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but they do have it dialed in. They do have a growing company that, like 3 of our last clients that we signed up, they all expressed in some way or another that they want to 3x the company this year, which is great because you can see, you hear the hope and the ambition, or a company that just signed up with us, just achieve the highest ever in terms of revenue, and they want to take it to the next level and open additional locations. So they know that they need to have processes and procedures. So it's an established company that has employees that they know that they need the processes documented and followed in order for them to grow and scale, and for the owner to have the freedom to create on the business or create their life that they want.
I love it. Well, Adi, this has been absolutely fantastic and illuminating. But before we head out, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Business Success Consulting Group?
Of course. So I'm on LinkedIn. I am pretty sure I'm the only Adi Klevit on LinkedIn. So you can go there, and then there is a link to my website, a link to schedule a call. You can also call or text us at 503-662-2911. Send me a text. I'll answer, or Joey, our sales manager, will answer. And any questions that you have, feel free to ask. And of course, our website, bizsuccesscg.com, has a lot of information and a lot of free resources.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for coming on, Adi, and until next time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.